Daniel, what the fuck is the Calcium Kid and why are you covering it? That's a good question, one viewer who'll watch this one. Allow me to explain. So The Calcium Kid is a movie where Orlando Bloom plays a milkman who drinks so much milk that he gets really hard bones and as a result becomes Britain's best hope for a boxing champion. It's like Rocky, only a bit shit, and every now and then it basically turns into one of those old got milk ads. No, I'm not joking, this is real. So look, here's the thing. For years, this film has been one of the 2 movies of legend within my friends group. I'm not going to name the other one just yet in case I cover its story for a future video, but if anyone can tell me what it is from this blurred out picture of its cover and DM me the name on Twitter, I will legit give you a $5 because I'm pretty sure there's only 7 people in the world have ever heard of this one, and I know all of them. Anyway, enough about that movie though, let's talk about The Calcium Kid. So this film is notorious amongst me and my mates because years back we found out this weird little unheard of British indie flick is for some reason absolutely hated by our friend Richard. Like, unnaturally despised. This dude fucking hates this film so much it's actually insane. Like, it's not a great film. It really isn't. But I've never known anyone in the entire universe hate something with such a burning passion as Richard hates The Calcium Kid. He hates it so much that when he's reminded the film exists, it actually makes him miserable. So being the great friends we are, every single birthday we've made a habit of getting him like 97 copies or so. This has been an ongoing thing for a long time now, and when he started disposing of all the copies we'd sent him, we started getting sneakier, hiding copies in unexpected places around his house whenever we'd visit. In his washing machine, in his sock drawer, in his pillowcase, in the abstract black hole of emptiness where his happiness used to be before we ripped all joy and life from him and filled it instead with an eternal existential dread that makes him feel like all life is meaningless and only serves as a vehicle to taunt him with the never-ending delivery of copies of a movie that constantly reminds him of the failures of mankind like he's living out his own personal hell. In his other pillowcase. There was no limit to our imagination. But the thing is, in all the time we'd been doing this, I'd never actually watched the horror we were supposedly subjecting him to. And recently I became curious and felt something of a responsibility almost to give it a fair shot. Problem is, I wasn't buying another copy because I didn't want to own this crap. I mean, what am I, Richard? Luckily, or perhaps unluckily, another friend I shared this story with in a moment that can only be described as destiny managed to, believe it or not, recently find a copy of this film in a bin at her work. That's not even a joke. And it just so happens that actually, I have that copy. Right here. I wasn't too optimistic of its quality, of course. For a start, the back of the box actually has 3 instances of grammar mistakes on it. You don't start sentences with connectives, lads. Oh, and of course we also found it in literal trash. But even still, you know, it couldn't have been that bad, is what I thought. You know, it couldn't be as bad as Richard said it was.
God save the queen. Long live our noble queen. Noble queen. God save the queen. God save the queen.
This movie is odd. So the film follows Orlando Bloom in what I believe is his first lead role, though I should specify this is after his stint as Legolas and Will Turner in 2 massive blockbuster franchises. Presumably his agent was on all of the drugs when he thought this would be a good next move. So Orlando Bloom plays protagonist Jimmy Connolly, a polite and smiley milkman who practices boxing in his spare time, and during a sparring match between himself and a fella called Pete Wright, Britain's #1 contender for the World Middleweight Boxing Championship, Jimmy accidentally breaks Pete's hand with his thick, milk-enhanced skull. Without a fighter, shitty promoter Herbie Bush, portrayed by comedian Omid Jalili, decides to push Jimmy in Pete's place because he's got no one better, and that sets up a rags to rags story where this working class no-name milkman has to take to the world stage for this fight. I'm kinda glad I watched this actually because I think this film makes for a really interesting case study in noble intentions not paying off. I don't want to be too critical of the people who worked on this because for a lot of them it was their first feature, and it's on such a low budget that in a way it is sort of impressive since I'm assuming a lot of the cash went to the star power of Orlando Bloom since he was fresh off of Pirates of the Caribbean the previous year, and I can't imagine after him they had much cash left to spare. Now in the film's favour there is something there, Presented in mockumentary style, the opening of this movie isn't too bad, and even has a moment that I genuinely thought was really funny.
Thriller in Manila. Shut up! The rumble in the jungle. Herbie Bush Promotions brings you the melee on the telly.
The problem is, it's a one-trick pony. While this works fine as an opening act, he has a hapless hero, he has our shady promoter, he has the celebrity opponent, that's all these people are. Whereas in a film like Rocky, which, let's be honest, this film shamelessly rips off right down to the catalyst of Big Shot's opponent has broken hand and can't fight, the characters develop. Every single person in Calcium Kid, however, from the moment they appear to the film's credits, stays almost completely static. Jimmy is still overly optimistic and naive, Bush is still shady and greedy, all the working class characters are two-dimensional stereotypes, literally everyone in this film just sort of passively lets the events of the movie wash over them without any of it meaning anything. So all the film has to sit on is its comedy, which, while occasionally humorous, is often, well, this.
Done wonders for business as well. Speaking of which, you two look as if you could do with a massage. I could fit you both in before my 5 o'clock if you like.
So the movie becomes this hugely drawn out gag which gets old pretty quickly and narratively doesn't even make sense to begin with. I mean, for a start, why is Jimmy even getting this opportunity? In Rocky, Balboa only gets his shot at Apollo because Apollo and his promoter spin a bad situation into an easy big money win through manipulating the media into buying this whole rags to riches story. Jimmy in Calcium Kid, though, is the butt of a recurring gag that literally no one gives a shit about him.
See that? Back page of the Standard is worth its weight in gold. This is a huge result.
There's also absolutely no reason in the world why an extremely incompetent Herbie Bush, a man with literally no other boxers under his belt, is for some reason the manager of Britain's biggest boxing hope in the first place. Why would someone with championship potential and a huge win record be working under a man who he knows is a complete idiot? Surely other promoters with better resources would be chomping at the bit for him. Rocky being ill-equipped made sense because by all accounts he was a nobody who got a lucky break. But here, it's like if David Hay was training down the local community centre. What I think is most interesting, however, and it's probably not something I would have thought about if I hadn't just been making my own film, is that conceptually this film is broken from the get-go because its main hook literally can't pay off. There's a really unique and curious mistake made here, and one I have in the past almost fallen into myself, in that even if the script was really funny and airtight with great dynamic characters, there's a fatal flaw in that they never once had the budget to give it the ending it should have. From the very get-go, if you're aware of how low budget the film was, you realise, hang on, the fight can't happen. The whole narrative is centred around building up to some big boxing battle taking place on the grand stage of a massive sold-out arena. But how the fuck are they going to film that on a total budget of 100 grand? Simple answer is, they can't, and they won't. Now maybe it's just me, but I think there's something really compelling to take from that. In film, it's a common mentality to always prioritise story over everything, but here, the creators of this film have to break what should be the obvious narrative steps because they wrote a story that their cash couldn't possibly produce. You can see them struggle with this cost from the very beginning of the film.
Jose, why are you taking this fight to Pete Wright's own backyard?
I thought it would be nice to try the fish and chips.
Finding narrative excuses for the fight to take place in London so that they don't have to travel the world to film or find a massively expensive mansion to act as the celebrity boxer's home by having him be the away fighter, which allows them to film in what looks like a nice hotel instead. They also use what is presumably royalty-free footage of audiences by boxing rings. But when it comes time to deliver the, pardon the pun, knockout blow of the big fight they've been building up to, it has to take place in what looks like a car park, with the unsatisfying and kind of nonsensical reason of Pete, the boxer who lost his chance at the beginning of the movie, kidnapping every major character at gunpoint and shoving them in this room to take revenge by having the boxing match take place? This is what I find absolutely fascinating about the movie. They clearly knew this fight had to happen since technically they gave us the climax they were building to, but without the budget to put that together, maybe this shouldn't have been the script in the first place? I mean, I can only speculate as to how this all went down behind the scenes. Maybe they originally wrote it with the boxing match in the arena and then got the budget, but it was lower than what they expected and had to change it. Maybe it was $100,000 to make the movie or nothing, and they thought better to make a film with a narratively broken ending than no film at all. Some would disagree, but that would be a position I could sympathise with. It's an impossibly difficult industry and you have to get your foot in the door however you can in some cases. Maybe this was always the script because they knew they'd never get the cash they needed to make the ending it was supposed to have. Without knowing the circumstances under which they acquired the cash, it's impossible to say really, but the reason I find this so interesting is that as a case study, it's actually strangely the best example I can find of artistry versus cost, and for that reason it's sort of worth studying, because it might be that this cheap ending is the only reason the film can even exist, but it also means that the film was kind of doomed from the get-go, as even if everything else was great, side note, it isn't, but that's not the point, the payoff was always going to be nonsensical and flat. I mean, just look at this. Why is Pete making them fight other than so the audience can see these two fight? Why has no one in the massive crowd at the boxing arena questioned the fact that neither fighter has came out to ringside when they were called upon? You're telling me not a single person is looking for these missing celebrities despite the fact thousands of people in attendance and potentially millions at home have just become aware of their nationally televised absence? No one thinks that's odd. I just don't get it. It doesn't work. Imagine if the Avengers blew all of the money for the Battle of New York on the film that comes before it and so the battle could never happen. Or let's say Helm's Deep couldn't be done but all the events leading up to it could. Or perhaps for an even better example, imagine if The Karate Kid or Rocky didn't have the budgets to end on their big competition fights. Those films would be fundamentally broken from the get-go. They wouldn't be able to finish the story they're telling. And if you can't finish the story, well, there's kinda no story. I think the filmmakers had honourable intentions at the start of this whole thing. This movie isn't worthless. I actually really enjoyed this almost kitchen sink, quirky drama-like quality to the setting. As growing up in the kind of council house areas the film is based in, I saw a lot of familiar archetypes, and that was kinda nice to see. What wasn't so nice was the static nature of these people that basically made them the butt of the joke. Haha, his mom's a prostitute. Haha, his mate's a chavvy prick. Haha, this girl's a weird stalker. Yeah, and that's all they are. I think they were trying to convey this sort of Full Monty or Snatch kind of caper with flawed working class characters, but in other films that successfully pull this off, these people have depth. Yeah, Renton in Trainspotting is a heroin addict, but he's also trying to escape from it all. Yeah, Gaz in The Full Monty opens the film by stealing scrap metal, but he's desperate and trying to support his son. Yeah, Sean in This Is England is a little racist shithead, but he's been radicalised by a thug who's taken advantage of his vulnerable state after the loss of his father. These characters have depth. They aren't just thieves and smokers and drinkers and con men, but if they were in The Calcium Kid, they definitely would be. It's weird because it's such an oddly executed film that I could talk about it for ages. I haven't even scratched the surface of some of its dodgier decisions. There's a subplot where the main character gets mistaken for a fascist that goes nowhere. There's a lot of gags get drawn out for a really, really long time. Like, do we honestly need to see Orlando Bloom drink this entire bottle of milk? They even managed to pay for cameos by former boxing champions Chris Eubank and Frank Bruno, but not knowing how to fit them in, they literally just walk into a room one after another to awkwardly deliver a line of support to Jimmy out of nowhere, and then leave the room never to appear again. It's also worth noting that this occurs at a point in the film where the world thinks Jimmy is a white nationalist. Now there's something about Chris Eubank and Frank Bruno that makes me think they might not offer their support to what they believe is a racist fascist. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there must be something there, some common denominator between the two that would suggest they wouldn't support that kind of mentality. Now, I did intend for this video to be pretty laid back and jokey and not remotely serious or actually analytical, but the more I thought about the film, the more I got weirdly fascinated by it, and I couldn't help but break it down. Partly this is due to the context it had in my circle of friends, and while I don't quite get why Richard hates it as much as he does, there is some just overtly odd quality to the whole thing that's uniquely its own, and I can see why that quality could really get under your skin. It's kind of the filmic equivalent of a boring, uneventful night eating crisps at the nearest pub. It sort of exists in this weird bubble of unusually misguided attempts at comedy that tries to rest on its British working class identity in a way that's charming, but just comes off as kind of grating and awkward. It's weird that it even exists in the first place, sort of sitting side by side in terms of tone, theme, and overall naffness as Sex Lives of the Potato Men. It sort of works only as this poster boy zeitgeisty relic of a small mid-2000s subcategory of below average to terrible British comedies that somehow exist but had no idea what they were doing that everyone has now forgotten about. Ah, my favourite genre. It's wonderfully strange. What's even more mental is this ridiculous plot of a milkman becoming a world championship boxer isn't even exclusive to this film. It's happened 3 fucking times. Twice before this movie with the films The Milky Way and Kid from Brooklyn. It seems to me like the film industry has been secretly trying to perpetuate this idea that milk is a way to extreme strength and toughness. Is this propaganda from dairy industry sponsorships? Or is there some truth to this? Now, I'm no scientist, but I do want a shameless excuse to throw to another YouTuber I recently discovered who also isn't a scientist, but is a milk expert. So to answer this question with a complete tonal shift from everything that came prior, because I went off on huge observational tangents and totally forgot to put jokes in my section, here's resident YouTube milk sire, Mikey of Angsty Teabags. Over to you, Mikey.
Thanks, Copper Knob. I'm Mikey, and I've never touched a breast that isn't my own. But today, we're talking about milk, and I do know a lot about that. So today, we're going to find out if milk can make you a champion boxer. Now, I think boxing is an erotic dance of fists that really gets me hot under the collar.
Come on, let's just cut to the chase.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to The Chase.
So I decided to hire a real-life boxer, as you can tell by his fucked up face. So this is Tommy. Now I know you're thinking, do they call him Tommy because of his fast, bullet-like punches? No. No, they... Oh!
You got knuckle dusters?
No. Right, you ready?
What are you doing?
Thought we were going to spar. Oh, Jesus, that was a hard blow. Don't use teeth next time. Fucking hell. Someone order a knuckle sandwich!
Come on, let's do this.
That's the spirit. Oh no, wait, that's the Sprite. That's the spirit. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want a head guard?
That's okay. I brought my own. You know what they say? Float like the Titanic, sting like an STD. My ear hurts. You know, they used to call me Jabba the Hutt.
You alright?
Yeah, I think I'm fine. Looky here, Goldilocks. You don't want to mess with me. I'm so big, I can't even fit through doors. That's it. I'm going to give him the old left-right good night. Good night.
Boys, please stop fighting!
Bloody hell, you're on a roll. Listen here, you. I can't have you showing me up like that, you tit. Go home. God, get out of here. Get bloody...
Hey Mikey, where did Tommy go?
Hopefully back up for adoption. Now, as you know, you should always fight people your own size. But lucky for me, I found a chubby 12-year-old in the park. I'll see you in the ring, Nathan. The gloves are off.
Oh Mikey man, I've been waiting for half an hour. You said we were going to go boxing training.
What? No, I never.
But you said you were on the way.
I am on the way. In conclusion, milk can definitely ensure your bones are rock hard for boxing. But to me, boxing is just foreplay, so the only rock hard bone Tommy will be pounding will be mine in the showers. Thanks for coming. I think it's about time for me to hit the road.
Okay. So that answered almost nothing. But I was genuinely curious about this when I realised it was a repeated narrative, so I did some research of my own. And this has absolutely nothing to do with films whatsoever, but when carrying out some study into the powers of milk, I somehow managed to stumble across the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen, and I have to tell absolutely everyone about it. So this is whitepowermilk.com. A website that's currently down but can be found on the internet Wayback Machine, where racists can pay upper-class naked white women to gargle milk for them. This is fucking legit. Now, I can't find any suggestion that this website was satire or anything, so as far as I can tell, this was a real service. You pick a girl, have her gargle milk for an extortionate price, and then spit it back out and send it to you. I don't know what to say. I just thought this was worth mentioning because fucking look at it. Oh, I'm in way over my head here. This isn't my area to cover. I'm going to throw it back to Mikey. This feels like his area of expertise. Mikey, you want to cover this shit? Mikey! Mikey! Oh, fuck, he's wanked himself into a day-long coma. Again. Well, if you want to see what the Milky Madman thinks of White Power Milk, check out his video on his channel Angsty Teabags tomorrow when he's conscious. Until next time. This has been a fucking weird video.